I've now got two pieces that look like this. This is my back leg, my front leg, and my pocket sitting inside that seam there. I've pressed towards the front, so this is the front here, the pocket and the top of that seam, and then as I've come down here I've just pressed it open, just folded it back and pressed it open towards the hem. Now what we're ready to do is to create the legs. So we're going to do exactly the same process on both of our legs. Let's turn it this way round, and whilst I've got it there I can just show you that that is where the pocket sits. So you can see that it's nice and flat there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fold this over the top of here. So you can see that I've got right sides together, front leg, back leg, right sides together. Now when I teach pyjama trousers, some people then say, oh my goodness, I've done it wrong, they're different from each other. Don't worry, they're supposed to be. Your back piece is always going to be bigger than your front piece because it has to go around the back of your body, which is bigger. I'm not being rude, everybody's body is bigger at the back. You also need to be able to sit down, so it needs to have that extra fabric to go around when you're sitting down. So what we do is we take this line here, which is your inside leg seam of your front leg, and bring it over to meet the inside leg seam of your back leg. And just matching the two pieces up all the way down, you are going to pop some pins in and secure those two legs together, or the one leg rather, the back and the front leg piece. You can match the notches, there's a few notches along the way. You should hopefully find that they match up nicely at the hem. There we go. Just put as many pins in as you feel comfortable with, making sure that they match at the hem. There. Put an extra one there because there's a curvy bit. It's always best to have an extra pin or two when we're dealing with a curve. One more in there in between those two. Okay, so you don't forget that you are creating a three-dimensional shape here. So the front leg is drawing the back leg in, and the back leg will have more volume to it. So it won't sit nice and flatly now because you kind of created that three-dimensional tube. So we've pinned that together. We're now going to sew down here with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance and do exactly the same process on the other leg, so we end up with a pair of trouser legs. You'll have sewn your inside leg seams on both of your trouser legs, and then you're going to go ahead and trim down your seam allowance to about half of what's there, and then zigzag these edges to finish them. And the reason why you trim them down is just because you've got this curve here, and with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance that's going to ruckle a little bit. If you trim it down, it will sit nicely. If you've got an overlocker, then you're just going to overlock this inside leg seam, and you can trim and overlock as you go. Now I've got a confession to make, which is that I actually carried on making these thinking that my camera was videoing what I was doing, and unbeknownst to me it wasn't. So I've had to do a little bit of unpicking and go back a stage in order to be able to show you. So I had actually finished all of this and the waistband in fact, and I've unpicked it. So this is why this is going to look a bit bedraggled now. I've given it a good press, but just to let you know, just so that it makes sense what I'm about to say. So the next thing that you want to do is you're going to take one of your trouser legs, it doesn't matter which one, and you're going to turn it right sides out. Okay, so you've got one trouser leg inside out and one trouser leg right sides out, and lay them out like this. So here's your crotch seam here. What you're going to do is you're going to take your trouser leg that is the right side out, and you're going to post it inside your inside out leg. So you've got one trouser leg inside the other trouser leg. Now find this is called the fork, where the four seams meet, the crotch seam and the inside leg seam. and match those seams up perfectly. And just press both of the seam allowances in the same direction. Grab some pins, and you're just going to pop a pin there to secure those together so that you get a nice cross shape where that inside leg seam and the crotch seam cross over. Then what you're going to do is you're just going to match all the way around, so from your front waist all the way around and all the way back up here to your centre back at the waist. So you'll end up with this U shape that you're going to sew around. Now, because I'd already gone forward a few steps, not knowing that my camera wasn't recording, I've chopped off my notches. But when you come to do this, you will have 2 notches on the back and 1 notch on the front. And that will help you to match these seams together around this curve. You're sewing around a curve, so lots of pins to help you, especially on the more curvy bits. And we're just going to sew all the way around here. And did I mention I had to unpick overlocking? Oh dear, I wasn't loving that job. See, good with sewing machines, not so hot with technology. There we are, match that up, pin round. And you're just going to whiz round here on your sewing machine. And you're going to have a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. And just like before, we're going to cut away that 1.5 centimetre seam allowance and then zigzag the 2 together. On the outside leg seam, we did them separately because we needed to have them open for that pocket. But on the other seams, we can just do them all together. So there you go, pin that down. And can you see, I've got one leg inside the other, like this, right sides together. And I've just gone around that big U shape there. So let's go over to the sewing machine and get that seam sewn. Now back at the sewing machine, and I'm going to pop this under here. Now you're going to sew this together with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. I, however, already chopped off half of it from where I had to unpick due to my camera not recording. So ignore the fact that I'm not using a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. Imagine it's there. It was a few hours ago. So I'm just going to go around like this. Let's move my pins over to this side. I'm going to take it one bit at a time, nice and slowly. Pins out as I go, matching your notches, raw edges matching, and right sides together. And all the way around we go. Once you get to your crotch seam here, just make sure that your seam allowances are all nice and flat. You haven't got anything caught up underneath. And if you ever find it tricky to sew round a curve, then you can reduce your stitch length. Smaller stitches are better for getting round tight curves. I've gone all the way round, and that's what I've got. The starting at the front waist all the way round and back up at the back waist. So I've now attached my 2 trouser legs together, and the moment of truth, I'm going to turn them out. So put your hand in one leg and draw the other leg out, and then you can turn give them a good shape. Make sure those legs are